o'clock in the afternoon on the 21st of January. And today we're going to get a walkthrough of H35. And if you want to go ahead, Jen.
Great. Good afternoon, Jen Carvey from the Office of Legislative Counsel. So we are going to do a walkthrough on H35. So I will put that up on the screen. So this is H35. It is an act relating to unmerging the individual and small group health insurance markets. And as you can see from the statement of purpose, because this will be a lot of actually what we're looking at, it's not just unmerging the individual and small group health insurance markets, it's also repealing a fair amount of outdated language that was relevant in the earlier stages of the Vermont Health Benefit Exchange, but are no longer applicable. Many of them are just simply expired, and there's a few that don't reflect the reality of how the Department of Vermont Health Access, DVHA, administers the program. So the first section we're going to look at is one of those. Section 1 amends 33 VSA Section 1802. We are in now the statutes on the Vermont Health Benefit Exchange that are in Title 33. And in the definitions there, when it uses the term qualified employer, we had for a period of time a small employer for purposes of the exchange was one who had not more than 50 employees, and then that was increased to not more than 100 employees. And so that definition changed. You'll see in several places changed back in 2016. And so we're just setting it at 100 and deleting the old language. So it under current law, it says qualified employer means an entity that employed an average of not more than 50 employees on working days and met certain criteria. And then it said on and after January 1st, 2016, it also includes an entity that has not more than 100 employees and meets those same requirements. Well, we are now well after January 1st, 2016. So we're just getting rid of the old outdated version and sticking with the 100. And that's the change you see from 50 to 100 here. And you'll see that one show up in a few different sections. Same change in Section 2. This is amending an entire statute in the exchange statutes on qualified employers. And again, we have this pre-2016 language about an employer with not more than 50 employees. We're just cleaning that up and sticking with a straight definition of a qualified employer as an entity with an average of not more than 100 employees. Section 3, we have duties and responsibilities of the Vermont Health Benefit Exchange, which is administered by DVHA. And these are some more kind of cleanup language. This one is really a clarification. So under existing law, the exchange must transfer to the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, the name and taxpayer identification information number for each individual who was an employee of an employer, but was determined to be eligible for a premium tax credit for the following reasons. And really I believe they provide that information for everyone who was deemed to be eligible for a premium tax credit, not just those who were employees of an employer. So this now says, including anyone who is an employee of an employer, but was still deemed eligible for the premium tax credit. And that's because there's certain reasons that somebody who is an employee of a qualified employer would still be eligible for premium tax credits. And that's because the employer doesn't provide minimum essential coverage, or it's determined under federal law to be unaffordable or not provide the required minimum actuarial value. Similarly, we have some transferring to U.S. Treasury the name and taxpayer identification number of each individual who they don't notify. It sounds like when somebody changes employers, it's just someone who ceases coverage under a qualified health plan during the plan year and the effective date of that cessation. And then again, they're not, DVHA is not tracking people's changes in employment the way it was originally projected. And that's when there was the potential the state was going to stand up its own shop, its own small employer health benefit exchange. And we did not end up going that path. So under existing law, there's also a requirement for DIVA to establish procedures. And it currently says, including payment mechanisms and standard fee or compensation schedules. That part has never happened, that allow licensed insurance agents and brokers to, and then this again says, be appropriately compensated outside the Navigator program. And again, I think some of this was related to the setting up the shop that didn't happen, although you can hear more from DIVA and others about the rationale for some of this. This was as long as we were cleaning up or making some changes in the exchange statutes, they wanted to do some cleanup. Section 4 is where we really get to the place where we're making the change about the unmerging of the individual and small group markets. And I have to start with a caution that it was never a very clearly stated, we are hereby merging the markets. It's just some subtleties in the way the language was written. So now it's a matter of just trying to clarify that they are in fact separate. So in the first case here in this section on health benefit plans for individuals and small employers, in the definition of health benefit plan, we're specifying that this is a plan that is offered through the exchange or a reflective health benefit plan that is issued to an individual, and I've added in a reference here to in the individual market, or to an employee of a small employer in the small group market. So it never said in a combined market, but this, we're being clear, is now creating this or introducing this concept of these having specifically separate markets. On page 7, we're again getting rid of that pre-2016 language about 50, not more than 50 employees in a small employer. So that consistent cleanup. And then just a stylistic change here. And then in B1, at the beginning of the exchange for the first several years, people had to buy their plans through the exchange. There was not the availability of buying directly from the insurer. And at some point in there, that option became available. And so we're no longer saying to the extent permitted by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, which we were doing when it was first, when that direct purchase option first came about, and we wanted to make sure we were not running afoul of anything. Now it's a pretty standardly accepted part of the exchange. So an individual can purchase a plan, and this won't change, through the exchange website, through navigators, by telephone, or directly from a carrier. And it's striking the if the carrier elects to make direct enrollment available, because they all have and continue to. Similarly, for small employers, we're getting rid of this to the extent permitted by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. But in this case, the small employers and their employees only purchase directly from the carrier. So we're getting rid of those other options because that's not how they buy their plans anymore. Couple, again, little subtleties I'm trying to introduce in here to reinforce this idea of separate markets. No person may provide a health benefit plan to an individual or to a small employer. Wouldn't say that by itself makes the change, but it sort of reinforces this idea that these are being done separately. No person can provide a health benefit plan to an individual, again, or to a small employer unless they are a registered carrier. And it goes on with some of that. But we get to a couple of places now where we're getting more explicit about the separate markets. One is under guaranteed issue, which is a requirement that a health insurance plan that makes its plans available to all individuals or all small employers guarantee acceptance of everyone who wants to be in that plan, who qualifies. So this now says, a registered carrier would say, a registered carrier shall guarantee acceptance of all individuals and their dependents for any health benefit plan offered by the carrier in the individual market. It's now creating just individual and individual market, regardless of any outstanding premium amount. This is existing law that a subscriber may owe the carrier for coverage provided during the previous year. And then a separate provision for guaranteed acceptance of all small employers, their employees, and their employees' dependents for any health plan offered by the carrier in the small group market, again, regardless of outstanding premium balance. And then another place where we're separating these is under the community rating method. So this is kind of the biggest part, is having different risk pools for the individual market and the small group market, which is the biggest part of what we mean when we talk about unmerging the markets. So this requires a carrier to use community rating. So the risk is spread across the pool based on everybody who is in the pool and not just on a particular, when there's experience rating, it's really based on the particular group. This is more spread out. So community rating method for determining premiums for health benefit plans. And so here we go. Shall determine the premiums for the carrier's individual market plans separately from the premiums for its small group market plans. So that's the clearest place we're saying we are talking two separate markets, two separate risk pools. And then just some non-gendered language here. And then effective date, we have this taking effect on January 1st of 2026, based on some previous session language. We created the unmerging of the market for a single plan year at a time. And so that goes through this plan year. We currently have temporarily unmerged markets. This would make that permanent going forward, starting with the next plan year, which starts January 1st, 2026. That's what we have. Now I'll let other people tell you if they think that it's a good idea and anything else you want to know about how it works, but this is what the words do.
So just to clarify, this bill keeps in place what has been in plan year 2025. Just keeps that in place.
Indefinitely. Yes, that's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the last few years, we've had like 1 year at a time, 1 or 2 year at a time, temporarily unmerged markets. And then this would put that in place indefinitely going forward, unless and until the legislature made a change to remerge or do something else with it.
Okay, so if we wanted to remerge them at some point.
You could remerge them, right, but you don't have to come back to this every year, every 2 years to unmerge. You're just kind of permanently unmerging. There's always a little asterisk that you're the legislature and you can make changes. I think that permanent.
Leslie, did you have, that was my question. Oh, okay. Does anyone have any questions for Jens?
That's the only thing we're trying to accomplish here.
Yes, so this bill is permanently unmerging the markets and making some cleanup, but the only substantive piece is the unmerging.
Jen, could you go to page 8, please?
Yes, let me put it back.
Where the, it's line, starts on line 3.
Yes.
Can you just explain that again? What that's doing?
Yes, so that's actually not doing anything because this has already happened. This was language, and I'm not going to get the year right, but several years ago, probably back in the 2014, 2015 range, the legislature enacted language to allow individuals and small groups to purchase plans directly from the insurers rather than going to DVHA's website and going through the Vermont Health Benefit Exchange website, even though they're still the same plans. And so at the time, the language was in here making, giving some caveats. First, to the extent that it was allowed by the federal government, that was at the bottom of page 7. And second, assuming the carriers were choosing to make direct enrollment available. Well, they've both chosen that a long time ago and have made it a pretty standard part of their operation. So we're just taking out that if they choose to make direct enrollment available, and the expectation would be that it would continue to be available.
Since it's already done, what you're just doing is cleaning up.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's what I thought. Thank you.
So essentially, the whole bill is just cleaning up outdated language, except for we are permanently unmerging the markets.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Any other questions for Jen? All right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
So we're set to do a break. We did 15 minutes of high intensity work. But we have, I don't think Emily's here. Yeah. So Emily Byrne from our Joint Fiscal Office is coming in at 1:30. And she's going to give us a presentation on what the budget adjustment actually is. So